Today's lesson is 3-3 Reteaching. The learning goal for this lesson is to estimate to find products. We're going to start this lesson with a word problem. A bus service drives passengers between Milwaukee and Chicago every day. They travel from city to city a total of 8 times each day. The distance between the two cities is 89 miles. In the month of February, there are 28 days. The company's budget allows for 27,000 total miles for February. Is 27,000 miles a reasonable budget mileage amount? Okay, so this problem is kind of long, and it includes a lot of information that I don't really need to know to solve the problem. So I'm going to go ahead and take my red pen here and underline the important parts. The first thing I'm going to underline is 8 times. This tells me how frequently or how many times that they have to drive between the two cities. The next thing I'm going to underline is the distance that they have to drive each time. It tells me that the distance between the cities is 89 miles. In the month of February, there are 28 days. This is also an important piece of information because I have to know how many days they're making this trip. The last thing that you want to take notice of here is the question. You want to keep this in mind as you're trying to solve this problem, because it's not asking you to find a reasonable estimate, it's asking you if 27,000 miles is a reasonable estimate. And here when it says budget mileage amount, it's just talking about the amount of miles that are allowed in February. So let's take a look at how we could round these numbers to figure out if 27,000 miles is a reasonable estimate. Go ahead and write these 3 numbers in this chart up here in your math notebook. These are the important numbers that we're going to work with. Make sure you include the labels so you know what each of these numbers are. Now we're going to go ahead and round them. To start out, I'm just going to round each of them to the nearest 10, just to make it a little bit easier on us. So 8 is going to round up to 10. Then I'm going to multiply it by 89, which is going to be rounded to 90. And then 28 days, I'm going to round to 30. Okay? We know that multiplying by multiples of 10, we can just leave these zeros off and multiply our non-zero digits before we add those zeros back on. So we're going to multiply 1, 9, and 3. Well, 1 times 9, I know because of the identity property, is going to stay 9. Then I'm going to multiply 9 by 3, and I'm going to get 27. Then I have 1, 2, 3 zeros that I'm going to add on to the end. And my total estimate, my estimated product is 27,000. This tells me that the estimate of 27,000 miles for the month of February is indeed a reasonable estimate. The next thing I want to decide is whether 27,000 miles is an overestimate or an underestimate. So on this slide we have the definitions as well as an example of both of these terms. I would recommend that you also write these definitions down in your math notebook. An overestimate is an estimated product that is greater than the actual product. My example down here, I have the problem 18 times 27 equals 486. Well, that's a pretty difficult problem, so I'm going to go ahead and estimate a product. And I rounded 18 to 20 and 27 to 30. When I multiply these two factors together, I'm going to get the product of 600. Notice how 600 is greater than the actual product of 486. And I also want you to take note of how my numbers change here. 18, when we rounded it to 20, it got larger. And 27, when we rounded it to 30, also got larger. Because both of these numbers went up in value, my estimate is going to be an overestimate. Okay, the next term here, we have underestimate. And this is an estimated product that is less than the actual product. Okay, so our example here is 52 times 31 equals 1,612. My estimated product when I rounded these two numbers is 50 times 30 equals 1,500. Notice again how my products are different here, but this time my estimated product is less than my actual product. Let's take a look at those numbers again and see how they change when I rounded them. 52 was dropped down to 50, so it went down when I multiplied them together. 31 was dropped down to 30, so it also went down in value when I rounded it. Because both of these numbers went down in value, my estimated product is going to be less than my actual product. Sometimes you have to actually find the product, because sometimes you might, let's say for an example, you might have 27 times 33, okay? When I round this, I'm going to round 27 up to 30, and I'm going to round 33 down to 30. Notice how this number, 27, rounded up, and 33 rounded down. This one I'm going to have to find the actual product to figure out whether or not it's an over or under estimate, because my numbers are going both directions. All right, with those definitions of over and underestimate in mind, I want you to try and figure out whether or not 27,000 miles is going to be an overestimate or an underestimate. Let me go ahead and write our numbers that we rounded to on this screen for you. We rounded 8 up to 10, and 89 to 90, and 28 to 30. Take a look at what's happening to each of these numbers. What happened from between 8 and 10, it went up. Between 89 and 90, it went up. And between 30 and 28, it also went up. So that's going to tell me that my estimate of 27,000 miles, oh, I'm sorry, it's not an underestimate, is going to be an overestimate, because all of my numbers in my estimated product were rounded up. So my estimate is going to be an overestimate. The actual product is going to be less than 27,000. Another way you could find an estimate for this problem is to use compatible numbers. And remember, these are numbers that are easier to add, subtract, multiply, or divide mentally. My example problem down there is 23 times 94, and I've used compatible numbers instead of rounding to find the reasonable estimate here. If I were to round these numbers, I would have to the nearest 10. I would drop 23 down to 20, and I would round 94 to 90. Notice how that's not those aren't the factors that I included in my compatible number estimation. I took 23 and I changed it to 25 because that's a number to me that is very easy to multiply. And I changed 94 to 100. So that's also a number that's easy to multiply. And when I do multiply these numbers out, I just do 25 times 1 and add my 2 zeros. And notice that these are also close in value, so this would be a reasonable estimate as well. So to find an estimate for our bus problem using compatible numbers, we're going to walk through that a little bit together. So 8, I might round up to 10 still. 89, I could round up to 100, because those two numbers are very easy to multiply. And then maybe I'll just leave 28 how it is, not change it all, because we're going to take a look at our non-zero digits here. So we have 1 times 28. Well, I know that the identity property tells me that I'm gonna just get 28 there because I'm multiplying 28 by 1. So then I'm going to take a look at the zeros I have, and I have 1, 2, 3 zeros that I'm going to add on the end. And my estimate this time is 28,000. Now this seems like it might be kind of far away from the estimate of 27,000, but in the long run, since these are such large numbers, this gap isn't as prevalent. Remember, you can use rounding or compatible numbers, whichever one makes more sense to you, to find a reasonable estimate for multiplication problems.